A very good evening, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to have you all join us on this chilly evening. As a fellow tech professional, I can only assume that my audience have taken out a piece of their busy daily routine to engage with what excites us the most, that is, tech again. I am Manvi, your host and moderator today, for yet another edition of our very own Intuit Tech Stories, where we come forward and discuss the whims of our beautiful tech world. By trade, I am a backend developer responsible for developing functional web applications and managing cutting edge technologies to improve legacy applications here at Intuit. Before we move on with the business, I would like to introduce my panel for the day, who come from various backgrounds and are experts in their respective trades. Yeah. So, Sandeep, would you like to go ahead?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, good evening, everyone there. My name is Sandeep, and I'm a principal engineer at Intuit. I have close to 14 years of experience, and all my time has been here at Intuit. Yes, I joined as a fresher, and most of my experience has been on the app development, mostly as a backend engineer. But in the beginning of my career, I have worked as a front-end engineer also. So, like you can imagine, I have worked on different kind of tech stack, tools, frameworks, and we'll talk more about it.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Reeti. I've been working as a software engineer in the QuickBooks Online Advanced team at Intuit since the past 3.5 years. I've majorly worked on building various impactful features, primarily using various modern front-end technologies, including JavaScript, React, TypeScript, GraphQL, and more. And my journey with Intuit also began with college, and I've been here since then. And I'm really glad to connect with you all today, and I eagerly look forward to sharing my experience in today's webinar. Shashank.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shashank Keshu. I have around 7 years of experience as a software engineer, currently in Intuit as a senior software engineer. Before this, prior to this, I used to work at BookMyShow and a startup as well. My role at Intuit has been more of a full stack role. And my free time, I also work on personal projects such as IoT devices. And recently I found interest in Golang.
Thank you everyone for hopping on this webinar and readily accepting to meet and discuss tech with me. Moving on, in today's technological world, maximum business organizations are developing successful web apps to engage potential audiences, establish credibility, build deeper relationships, and attract new customers. As per the needs, requirements, and demands of audiences, every organization needs to have an online presence. Therefore, to create a promising and efficient website, companies are using multiple web tools. Hence, we thought it's only imperative for us to discuss on what goes behind making a cutting-edge web application that stands out, and hence our theme for the day, ingredients of a stellar modern app. To give you a glimpse of the flow of the webinar, I have a bunch of super interesting questions that I am going to run through my panel. Any insights or questions you might have, please make a note of them and drop them in the chat box, as we will take as many as possible towards the end of the webinar. So let's move ahead. Why is web development important for any organization? And what are the factors that make your application successful? So, yeah.
Sure, I'll take that. Thanks, Manvi. Nowadays, if you see, right, so online presence for organization is not just giving out information, right? So over the years, if you see, the organizations have now moved from building websites to building web apps, right? So with these web apps, they enable their users to perform very complex operation, but via simple and interactive interfaces, right? So if you have to have this effective and interactive web application, the web development skills become very, very important for an organization, right? Coming to your question on what makes an application successful, right? So let's look at some of the successful applications, right? What are they doing? So either they are solving a unique customer problem, or they are solving an existing problem in their own unique way, right? Example is like the famous example is Google search, right? So when Google search came, right, there were already a lot of search engines, right? They were providing the functionality to search and all. And then Google came and very quickly took over the market, right? It became, over the time, it became synonymous to search. What made it successful? Another example is Facebook, which I think some of us have used, or could, so by Google again. So Facebook superseded Orkut. So if we see, there are multiple factors that made Google, Facebook, or Intuit successful, but the principles are mostly the same. So if we see any successful application, it has a combination of product, engineering, and operation excellence. The product excellence requires, like, your target audience, and their behavior, their needs, and finally you display a customer-focused mindset to solve a problem. The engineering excellence means, like, how do you excel at the craft of engineering, right? Because you can make the app successful, but if you have to sustain the success, right, the success of that app relies on the foundation on which the app is built. That means choosing the right principles, right architecture, tools, technology, frameworks, and a bunch of other things. And the third one is operation excellence, which is like, how do we operate ourselves? How do we provide the business values to our customers, right? So because this is not a one-time activity. If we are talking about the web app, right, it's not like a first draft, right? It's a evaluation, right? We keep adding new feature, we keep changing process. So yeah, all of that factors makes the application successful, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sandeep. Those were all great points. And adding on, yes, so in the current digital era, like, web development plays a crucial role. And as we know, the web connects people across the whole world. And one of the main purposes of the continuous technological advancement has been to make everyone's day-to-day lives convenient, faster, and efficient. So I'll talk about two broad aspects for an application to be successful. One is the business impact, or the purpose that the application is solving. And another aspect is the technological perspective. So from the purpose of the business impact side of the application, identifying the customer's pain points in a particular domain, and then diving deep to understand that problem or the need is really important. And that's what we do at Intuit. We have great practices like interacting with the customers to understand their firsthand perspective, and then designing for delight and following customer-driven innovation to identify and work on the customer pain points. What follows is rapid prototyping, experimentation, and then finally building a software to solve that need in the best possible way. So taking Intuit's example, as its mission has been to power prosperity around the world for millions of our customers, I'm currently part of the QBO Advanced team at Intuit, and it's a cloud-based accounting software where we strive to provide efficiency and empower the financial lives of mid-market businesses. So that's the identifying your customer pain points and from the business impact side of the application. Next comes the technological perspective. So how is the engineering pipeline that you use for your application that can matter a lot in making it successful? So as Sandeep mentioned, engineering and operational excellence metrics are important and key factor while developing an application, and we follow it with every release that we do. It helps in ensuring that every release is properly validated with proper monitoring and fallback mechanisms if required. And there are very intricate details that can actually matter in making an application successful. So I'll give you an example from the performance side of an application. So let's say you're building a web application and the page load takes some time. So it is generally observed that people might tend to leave the page if it takes too long to load. So ensuring that whatever you're building still considers the performance aspect, like keeping the page load time within 3 to 4 seconds, even on slow internet connections, so that our customers do not have to wait for a long time and feel tired while the page is loading. So similarly, there are other factors like it is essential to ensure accessibility of the application. It should be equally accessible by everyone on the web. For example, there are even many keyboard users. So is the application easily navigable just using keyboard also, even without any mouse click interruptions? And so in all, developing and deploying a production-ready application that is robust, can be maintained easily in future, and scales well with increase in number of customers is what I think makes the difference in making an application successful in the long term.
Shashank, do you have any thoughts to add here?
Yeah, so I guess the Reeti and Sandeep already covered most of the guidelines for having a successful app. So regarding solving the core problem and targeting audience, or having a really good product design, having performance, offline capability, good customer support and empathy, these are definitely important things that you need to check in your checkbox to make your app successful. But there is also one more side of the story, which I personally feel is important, is regarding the financial aspect as well. So if your product has the best UI, has received the best award for having the best SEO standards or the accessibility, still it comes down to, are you generating enough revenue? So even your orgs will have financial goals in place. So even though you're working hard, you need to meet those financial goals to keep your product viable. So right now in this current market, having a viable product is considered successful as well. So for example, you can take an example of Twitter. Elon Musk recently posted the new architecture for Twitter. So you can just go on Twitter, check out his account. He has a Twitter architecture for the next gen systems. So the secret sauce is already out there. It is readily available to you today. You can go ahead, hire engineers and implement it today. But as long as you have a stable revenue coming in, it will not be viable for very long. And one more example is the Indian company Zerodha, which did not get a single rupee funding. It was all out of the pocket. Based on seed capital they launched, and they are very successful today. So definitely the core aspect is you have to focus on a very core feature of the product, make sure it works perfectly, seamlessly, and also you can translate that into generating revenue for your product. So all these things combined will make a successful application.
Okay, moving along. As Sandeep mentioned about product and engineering excellence here, I would have a follow-up question here, Sandeep. What are the requirements that we must consider to design a web application?
What are the requirements? Sure.
Yeah.
So if you see an app, like any app, what is it, right? What does it represent? So any app basically is a part of like organization's mission and goals, right? We look at the Intuit. Intuit has, like Riti just talked about, QView Advanced, right? Which is to help our mid-market customer to run their business. Similarly, we have TurboTax Online, which helps to simplify tax returns. So when we are developing or designing any app, we need to keep these mission and goals in the mind, right? Coming to the technology, right? Why or other aspects of the requirements. So when we design an app, most important thing is the requirements. The requirements has to be very well thought of and pretty balanced. Right? The app can have functional and non-functional requirements. The functional requirements talks about like features and functionalities that the app is providing. And it is very important to meet like, because that's what you are, what's the value proposition of your application, right? What customer problem you are solving and how you are solving that problem. The non-functional requirement specify the quality attributes of your web application or your application. For example, the application has to be extensible because the use cases will change. There will be new technology and we have to make announcements. It has to be performant. It has to be reliable. If a lot of users use the application, it has to be scalable. It has to be secure. It has to be usable. So you can go in and on, right? So if we see both functional and non-functional requirements define the overall product experience, and finally define the success of your application. Teams nowadays spend a lot of time on the user experience and the interaction. Like Intuit uses D4D, follow me homes, and that's where we solicit all our ideas and pressure test our designs, and finally we come up with the best interaction. Finally, we need a very strong foundation because we are not building for current, but we are building for future. And that's true for both functional and non-functional requirement. And to build a strong foundation, what we need a careful evaluation of different technologies, tools, frameworks, choosing the right architecture, choosing the right tech stack, creating the right processes. So there are a lot of things that we need to take care of. I think the principle is choose what is not what is best, but what is best for your requirements, right? So I think that's what I feel is very much needed we should keep in mind while we are developing or designing a web application.
Thank you, Sandeep, for having great thoughts about like what actual requirements we need here. And before moving on, we have a quick poll question coming up. Please take a second to answer that. Okay, just a second. Siva, could you please help me out with the poll question? I'm not able to launch it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm ending the poll now. Yeah. So looking into the answers, I would say most of our organizations use the same technologies like ReactJS, Spring Boot, Kubernetes, and very few of them have used GraphQL in their organization. So talking about the technology, what are the technologies that we generally use at Intuit, and how to choose the right set of technologies?
Sure. Yeah, so first of all, we use a variety of technologies at Intuit. And before choosing a technology, first of all, it is essential to understand the problem and the use case well. And then we go ahead as a generic pattern with brainstorming and designing a generic suitable approach for it. And once the optimal approach is chosen, then we select the most suitable technology or framework for it. And it is better even if that technology is already supported as part of the company's baseline infrastructure, so that all the underlying security checks, vulnerability issues, compatibility across platforms, and support for different features with updates and versions, etc., is automatically supported and consistent across the different repositories and easily maintainable in the future. So as an example of the various modern technologies that we widely use at Intuit for web development is from the front-end side, we use React majorly. So that's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces, and it has quite some benefits like virtual DOM and more. And along with that, we also use TypeScript. So that helps in stricter and more efficient type checking. And we use GraphQL for our APIs. So I see in the poll, like there are less percentage of people already using GraphQL currently in the audience, but I'll suggest to explore GraphQL as well, because we use it heavily at Intuit, and it has various benefits as compared to REST. So we earlier were on REST and then migrated to GraphQL on various applications because it has benefits like you can get exactly the data that you want with a single request. And so it helps in like fetching exactly the data that you want in a single request. And apart from GraphQL, like from the backend side, so coming on to the backend side, we use Java using Spring and Spring Boot frameworks. And then we use Kubernetes for automating the deployment, scaling, and management of containerized applications. And along with that, we also use a variety of OpEx tools. So OpEx tools include like Splunk, Wavefront. So we set up dashboards and alerts for all these. So we log all of our metrics for monitoring any FCIs and setting up alerts through these dashboards with our PagerDuty, so that the on-call can be automatically alerted if there's some unexpected spike or anomaly. And apart from that, from the analytics side, we create amplitude dashboards for tracking the feature usage. Is the feature being used well? How many clicks are we getting on that feature and all? And then comes more factors like quality perspective. So at Intuit, each developer is also portrays ownership and accountability for the developed features. So that is done through proper testing for whatever we build. And we, as part of what we're developing, we also add the corresponding unit test and automation test for those. So for example, from the UI side, you can use Jest, Enzyme, etc. for the unit test. And then automation tests are really helpful because once you're building a feature, you want to ensure that all the existing features continue to work well with it. So it automates and saves that manual effort of regression testing. So for automation, there are quite some frameworks that we use like Cypress or Playwright and even Karate. And apart from these, there are many other technologies and tools as well that depend on the use case. For instance, if you want to use a publish subscribe based messaging system, you can use something like Kafka. So those are now depending on the particular use case, but these were the major technologies and tools that we use while developing a web application. And in terms of the cloud services, so we use AWS for hosting. And we have some of our internal tools and libraries as well. So for example, there's one Intuit design library that we follow so that all the baseline components can be kept consistent across the various features in the product. So let's say all the primary and secondary buttons should have the similar consistent theme across different features in the product. So having that baseline library helps in ensuring that consistency and reusability. And then finally, we have Jenkins as well. So Jenkins helps in creating a continuous integration, continuous delivery, that is your CI/CD pipeline, and automating the DevOps related part to it, and keeping a consistent pipeline for CI/CD.
Since Reeti just now discussed about most of the Intuit stack, Shashank, would you like to elaborate more on the overall CI/CD pipeline and other tools that we use for web development?
Yeah, sure, Mani. Reeti did cover about the technologies that we use at Intuit. When it comes to CI/CD pipeline, we have pipelines in place, and the pipelines are different for different assets. So for a front-end focused asset, the pipeline is different. Basically, we may have an automation testing in place. We may have lighthouse testing in place. For a backend based asset or a stream processor asset, the test might be different, where you are not only having the pipeline generate the build, do the test, but also release those files in the Artifactory pages as well. So now I'll take into account only about the front-end asset here at Intuit, since this talk is more focused on front-end. So all the configurations for our pipeline are written on Jenkins. And every time you raise a PR, basically initialization of the job starts. In initialization, we also initialize any particular clusters or containers that requires. Basically, in that environment is where the pipeline will execute its jobs. When the initialization is complete, we have build tools in place. So for front end, we are using Webpack. Webpack is the most common front end build tool used. So in Webpacks, we may have different kind of configurations. Where we are either chunking it, or where we are using any lazy load plugins as well. All those configurations are predefined in place, and this job just builds it based on that configuration. Followed by that, we have tests in place. So usually in Intuit, we make sure all our tests are above at least or above 85% code coverage. And all of these are unit tests, and we use just Jasmine and Chai, different variations of Chai as well for writing this test. And also we have integration tests in place. That is basically we are using Cypress, and also a few teams are using Playwright as well. So in automation, it's more of testing based on the user behavior. So we don't test it at the core unit level, but as how the user uses or interacts with the application. Finally, we also have lighthouse testing in place. This is basically to make sure the assets such as the SVG files, image files, CSS files, or even fonts that we are using, all are under a particular threshold. And this threshold is also configured and by the team. So team has the liberty to configure these thresholds. And once all of these tests are passed, we perform releases. So releases can be of two types. One release is if it is a PR against the master branch or the release branch, you will have a release version, which is very specific to that PR. So you can replicate that build on your system and verify if everything is good. And we also have the final master release. When master release happen, that is when the customer sees the changes. Also, when master release happen, we don't do a complete 100% rollout. We have a phased rollout. And we also have experimentations in place. So if you want to experiment how different releases works, we have something called as, we have an Intuit internal experimentation platform where you can define which particular user sees which version of the app based on that and based on the feedback or analytics that you receive from the usage. you can continue the rollout as well. Also, we have application insights. Again, these insights are more about the asset insights. So, let's assume you have a backend service which is making calls to multiple systems. So, this insight will basically give you the expense report as well. How much expense did this asset cost you? All those insights you'll get. You'll also have in-depth analysis of your front-end assets also. We are using a platform called as Wavefront. Even these insights are initialized, where you can deep dive what is the TP metrics of your page, and if FCI is failed, even those metrics are also, those deep level insights are also patched in. After these, I mean, these are the standard jobs in place. Some teams can even further customize it based on their requirement. Yeah, these are some of the stuff we do in CI/CD pipeline.
Moving along, one question for all of you. What challenges each of you have faced while developing a product? Any specific experience you would like to share with us?
Yeah. Challenges, yeah. We love challenges, right? And I believe like most of us have faced challenges. I think the challenges are of the similar nature, and generally the challenges are around either people, process, technology, or it could be something very specific to your I think say team or your use case, right? So the first thing is around people. So if you see for an app, there are multiple stakeholders involved. Right? You will have PMs, you will have XTs, then you will have development teams, and sometimes you will have QA engineers. And keeping all these stakeholders on the same page, it is very important. So the first challenge is around how do you collaborate efficiently across these different stakeholders. There may be friction. Sometimes we do see cultural clashes within the team. So how do you basically overcome those challenges? So that's where I think what I have seen is like if we define the best practices or processes, right, to resolve these conflicts, that helps to overcome some of these challenges. The second one is again is around keeping up with the requirements and solving for different set of customers. In if you see any web app, right, it has different set of customers and not one size fits all. For example, some customers, if you see, they like to keep the user experience very, very simple. They don't want to deal with the complexity. Some users, they are okay with the complexity if you provide them high degree of customization. And the challenge is, how do you strike off a balance that should you keep it simple or should you keep it complex, right? One example, recently our team was working on workflow automation, and we faced a similar issue there also, right? So we let users create workflows by creating the workflow from scratch, where you can go ahead, define your steps and all of that. And people, at sometimes, many of the people got overwhelmed. They said that, okay, this is too much for us. So now what we did was like give them frequent templates so that they can easily use those templates based on their needs. So that's how basically you have to think of different experience. You have to strike a right balance between keeping things complex and keeping things simple. The third one is around the technology. So technology changed quite a bit. And I think sometimes you have this pressure, right? You have to always use the new technology, right? The new doesn't always mean better. Yes, there could be some advantage, but till that technology mature, I think, how do we say that whether we can, how do we determine whether we should use that technology or not? For example, I'll take the example of QBO again. We started long back with plain HTML and JavaScript. And then over the time, we started moving a framework called Dojo. And now we are moving to React, like we have already moved to React. Similarly, in the backend, we started with REST, and now we have moved to GraphQL, right? So now if you see, we have combination of everything. We have HTML, we are trying to like get rid of Dojo, like because we still have some parts which is using Dojo. Similarly, we have different kind of services. We have REST services, we have GraphQL, right? So eventually, what if you see like if you keep going on that path, you will require rewriting a lot of your code. You have to maintain multiple tech stacks, and eventually it will impede the speed. So there are multiple other challenges. I think I can keep going on, but I'll let others talk about their challenges.
Aditi, would you like to add more to this quick answer of Sandeep?
Yes, sure. Like agreed with all the points that Sandeep brought up. And to add on further, so some of the challenges that we face and conquer are like, again, like maintaining a balance of both feature plus tech tasks and prioritizing our tasks in the sprint accordingly. And so from the business side, our main goal, or you can say as a challenge, is that we always strive to provide efficiency to our customers. And whatever features we build it with that aim in mind. So for example, from the feature side, like we build bulk transactions, the ability to set up recurring tasks and automated custom workflows, which could help in providing efficiency to our mid-market businesses. And but coming on further to it, the challenge comes on increasing discoverability also of these features within the product, so that even like without reading any external docs, the user can get to know, okay, there's a new feature in the product and that could be useful to them. So that is where we add the suitable access points to it. And as an example, we used AI ML model for smart recommendations, so that if a customer is using a particular flow, so like continuously, we can suggest them that probably this automated workflow can be beneficial for you. So adding that contextual recommendations and access points is one way that we conquered from the business side the challenge of increasing the discoverability of the new features that we're building within the product. And second is, yes, coming to the tech side, that is the developer productivity and efficiency. So while we are building the feature, like definitely there are two options, that either it's easy to like just develop versus maintaining, like building something that is scalable and maintainable in the future. So it is always preferable to choose the second option, that when you build something, build it with the mindset of making it reusable. There have been multiple components that we have built and have been reused across teams. So that avoids building clones of the same thing. It gives a more platform mindset where teams can leverage on each other. And then also, like from the productivity side of the developer, what can we do to make things faster while ensuring that quality checks and everything are there for our features, but also like probably making them faster through automation or something. So as an example, I can share with you recently what we did was, like, we had a good automation coverage for our end-to-end integration scenarios for our built features. But that regression automated testing used to take a lot of time, like more than 30 minutes to run all the flows. So we held, like, we were a bit like, we worked on it, that what can we do to improve the developer productivity of it? Because whenever we are like testing any feature that we have built, that it works well with all the other features, it's going to take a lot of time. So we improved that time by parallelizing all of our automation specs. So parallelization there reduced our time from 30 plus minutes in the PR builds to just 5 minutes, like almost 80% time improvement. So that helped in improving the developer productivity while still ensuring that all of our like automation end-to-end regression testing is still happening. So that is the challenge, that you continue to work on building features while still ensuring that all the operational and engineering excellence metrics are followed, and still working on improving from the developer side as well, because the end user can be anyone. It can be the customer from the product side, or it can be the developers if you are thinking from the developer productivity side. And yes, like another point is, since we work on multiple projects involving multiple cross-functional teams, so which truly demonstrate a stronger together one Intuit mindset, but at the same time, it is essential to identify all the dependencies and ensuring that all the stakeholders are aligned. So there is where all your communication, timely communication, and aligning everybody timely is important. And an agile methodology really helps us in that, to ensure a smooth functioning even when multiple cross-functional teams are involved. And we also build with a global mindset. So for example, if you're building something for the US, that feature shows up in English, we should ensure that all the translations work well in other regions like Canada. For example, in French text, the text can go longer than the characters in English text. So is the screen still responsive with that? So building with the global mindset and ensuring that everything continues to work well is what has been our agenda while building anything. Yeah.
Okay. Moving along, Shashank, would you like to add more on the deployment pipeline and other stuff?
Yeah. So CI/CD pipeline, again, it's the same Jenkins job that we have in place. But in terms of the challenges that we faced during development, basically, I was working in a product which basically migrates desktop customers to online. We have two products, desktop and online. Our job was to migrate desktop customers to online. And when I started out, and I see a lot of questions coming in regarding the same thing, that is, which is the right software to use. So when I started out, the product was written on JSP pages. So it was a very old code. It was more than 8 or 10 years old. So again, at that point of time, everything in Java was considered the right approach. So basically, at that point of time, they found it right to write in JSP pages. But now it doesn't make sense anymore. So when we started out, basically, we were given a very short timeline to update this legacy code, at least in terms of UI, to make it more readable. So the customer conversions happen much faster. And the biggest challenge that I faced was we realized that this product is there both on Windows machines and on Mac. And Windows was using IE8. So if you have ever worked with IE8, you should realize a lot of the latest CSS properties are not supported. For example, Flexbox is not supported. If you want to figure out the media tags is not supported. So we faced a lot of hurdle. We basically literally had to write it very specifically and had to write a bunch of code. And once we rolled it out to customers, then we realized the Safari, basically Apple product, which also had the same product in it, was using Safari. So, and Safari wasn't supporting some of the IE's CSS property. Then we had to basically roll back, put it on hold, go back and write a very specific CSS style sheet for only Safari. So this is how we started out. And once we were in a good position, and once we planned to revamp the entire system, the first job that we did was we made the components reusable. So one of the core principles of React is having reusable components. And also we made sure the client-side storage is well managed. So we basically were using Redux. We are using a different principle of Redux, so that you basically have one store and all your actions, all your reducers, all in a single file. That way it is very easy to maintain. One problem we faced with JSP pages were each view of a page had a different controller, and the view of the page, when it changes, we couldn't identify from which controller it would be triggered. So by integrating Redux, we solved that issue. We were able to track out which change was caused by which action. We could backtrack the entire thing. Also, one major, I guess, innovation that we did was we built a routing-based system. So what would happen is we would have around 12 to 13 pages a customer has to go through before he can finally export his details to online product. So he didn't have to go through them, all of them. Few pages weren't relevant to him, but since they were all part of this unidirectional flow, we brought in a new routing-based system where it would basically compute his details, and based on his details, if it is relevant, only then show up the consecutive pages. So even before you navigate to the next page, we would pre-compute it. And if we find this person shouldn't be looking at this page, we'll skip that queue. We'll skip the queue, show him the next page directly. So all of this reduced the user's time on going through that application, but concentrated on a successful migration in the shortest period of time. One more thing that we also did was similar to component-based architecture, there is micro front-end architecture. So micro front-end architecture are a couple of assets. Individually, they're not doing anything, but together they will solve a particular problem. So we figured out to have a core asset in place and assets for something like as self-help or contacting customer care. These assets we divided up. When we divided it, basically when you divide, you also mean that you can release any changes in this asset independently. So one team can focus squarely on that customer support asset. One team can focus on the core asset, and they can work without disturbing each other. So even bringing micro front-end architecture solved most of the issues. Yeah, those are some of my thoughts on the challenges I faced in development mode.
Okay. Thank you, Shashank. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you, Sandeep and Riti, for your experiences, sharing your experiences here. So this has been a really fun discussion, knowing about engineering and operational excellence parameters from Sandeep, Intuit's go-to-tech from Riti, and about overall deployment pipeline of the product and reusing of the components from Shashank. Now that we have heard from the panel, we wanted to know that what you think about the web development tools. Feel free to add your questions in the chat box. Meanwhile, I'll take few questions which are already available in the chat box. So we have our first question from Johnson. What is the scope of web development in future? Is HTML, CSS, JS, and React is enough for fetching the job? Yeah, any one of you panel members, would you like to take?
Yeah, I can take that one.
Sure, Shashank.
So again, the scope of web development or any development is always evolving. If you stick on to one particular skill set, that is really a bad idea, because, for example, when I joined Intuit, almost all of the backend services was written in REST APIs. But Intuit as a whole took the decision to move to GraphQL. Definitely, there are advantages on both sides here, but as a whole, we took a decision to move to GraphQL, and today that is in place. So it's not like one particular framework. If you are expert in, it doesn't mean for the future as a whole, it is fine. That is definitely not the case. Every day you have to adapt and learn, and also that learning you should adapt in your day-to-day life as well. Also, good foundations is one of the key things that we look at Intuit. So some people at Intuit I have interviewed who come here at Intuit are very good in Angular, but they don't know anything about React. And in Intuit, most of the openings are for React, but still we focus the core foundations of that candidate rather than the framework. So focus on the good foundation.
If I definitely agree, Shashank. If foundation is good, I think the learning can be very, very easy. I think in my initial initial phase of my career, I also had that question. Oh God, there are a lot of technologies. How can I keep up with there's a new technology coming every day. So how do you keep up? But I think having the strong foundation helped me there. Don't worry about the syntax and all. I think you will learn and you will forget. So you can always refer the syntax and all, but I think the principles are very important. So if you have a strong, I just saw that HTML, CSS, JS, if you have pretty strong understanding or foundation about these also, I think that can get you enough job, because you can definitely prove in the interviews that you know the basics pretty well.
Yeah. Plus one to that, I think, yeah, if you have a fundamental strong, then React, Angular, these are like libraries and frameworks on top of JavaScript. So if your fundamentals are strong, then you should be good, and you could have a quite less learning curve because today there's some technology, in future there can be some other. So if your foundations are strong, it can be easy to learn any new framework.
Sure. Moving along to our next question. So we have our next question from Prasanna. How we can achieve a successful web application by adding all core values in a shorter period, considering most of the clients will not agree to a longer release cycle?
Yeah. Didi, you want to take it, or I'll take it?
Yeah,
I can start maybe my point of view. And I think all of us face this again, same question, like, should I go faster or should I build the things in the right way, right? I think there is if you see, like, from tech side and business side, there's always a tussle, right? Business will want that you deliver the features to our customers, and from tech you think, okay, I have to do it. I have to build a strong foundation. What happens if this feature becomes successful? There are more enhancements, and if I don't build the right foundation, then I have to rewrite, or maybe I cannot extend the feature. So I think it's always a double-edged sword. If you wait too long, right? If you are taking a lot of time to release your feature, then basically you will lose maybe the advantage. You will lose the market. The customers will move to some other product. But if you don't do the things right, probably you will not be able to scale. You will not be able to enhance the feature, right? So I think, in my opinion, what has helped me is, like, always take a balanced approach there. Solve maybe lesser use cases. Maybe convince your business to solve. Go with a MLP. Go with a leaner product experience, and build a foundation right. And there also, like, you need to think that how do you make both things extensible? Your architecture, your whatever code you have written, whatever design principles or design patterns you have used, or in the experience also, like, can it be extended? So I think you need to strike a balance. So I think there is not a right answer, right or wrong answer here, but it's just that you need to take a balanced approach.
Great, great, Sandeep. I would surely say that that would suffice this answer. And moving on, next question we have from M.A. Pradhan. As you mentioned, Intuit Design Library as your design system, does it support only React components or it supports web elements such that it can work across UI libraries?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can,
Yeah,
yeah.
Shashank.
Yeah, yeah, Intuit design system is basically a set of components which we use across all of our products. So we have QuickBooks, Mint as well. Here, yes, definitely most of it is on React because Intuit as a whole has decided the front-end architectures to be built on top of React, and Intuit has invested very large sums of time, effort, and money as well in that. So yeah, right now it is React, but also for mobile. So we even have apps which are on mobile. They are written on native languages, whichever is specific to that. So initially it was written on React Native, but now they found that writing in the core native frameworks is much better. So again, it's a mix of two. Riti, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, and just to add on, yes. So the main purpose of our Intuit design library is that the baseline consistency remains across the different features and products. So let's say the base like theme and structure of buttons or icons is similar for QuickBooks features. And on top of it, we add our own custom components and designs. So yes, like Shashank mentioned, for React, we have one, and then we have another library support for Android as well. So we have support for all the technologies that Intuit infrastructure uses. And these baseline library helps in maintaining the baseline consistency across the features.
Sure. Thanks, Riti. So one last question for the day. This is from Baligul. I see that at QuickBooks, we are still using screen scraping technology to get the data, which requires a user to provide their credentials at Intuit's site. Almost all the banks in India have provided their APIs through which we can fetch the account details of any user with user's consent. Then why are we not making the use of the same at QuickBooks? So,
Yeah,
like
I think I did answer that, Manvi. So I think when we started this entire track, right, we started with US and we didn't have enough APIs. The banks were not providing APIs because there were like thousands of banks and not everyone, like there are small banks also. So not every bank is providing API. So I think screen scraping was like, this is how we started. And I think that's that also talks about how much customers really trust us, that they are sharing their username and password with us, and then we log in on the app and we do the screen, we scrap their data from the screen. I think definitely this is not the very good approach, because there is a lot of maintainability issues with that approach, because every time a screen changes, the UI changes, we have to again rework on that. So I'm surprised if there are APIs, definitely we should use it. And I think, I remember, I don't work on that thread, but I remember that we have some examples where we are using the APIs, but I can confirm that with the team. But I think it's something that we should definitely do. APIs are more structured, the API response is well defined, and like the contract is there, right? So yep, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panel members to answer those community questions. So I would like to say just sorry that we will not be able to take more questions due to time constraints. And while it has been an amazing experience to discuss your questions, all good things will also have come to an end. and our webinar is not an exception. As the last piece of business, I would request you to please take the 2-minute surveys displaying on your screen and share your valuable feedback here so that we can come out and deliver the best. For now, it is a goodbye from myself and my panel. However, we will come back with yet another edition of Intuit Tech Stories with another enticing tech topic. Thank you and wishing you a very happy rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.